Hello and welcome to another episode of the Business of Business podcast. I'm your host, Roy. We are the podcast that brings a lot of a wide variety of guests that are able to speak to a lot of diverse topics. We just want to give you something to think about. Sometimes we don't know what we don't know, but then also if you do know that it's something that you're struggling with or need help, we want to give you some industry experts in order in which to reach out. So without further avail, we're going to jump right in today. We have an awesome guest. I've been waiting for this we've kind of kicked this can down the road, so I've been waiting for this interview for a long time. Ann Holm, she has been in the people development business since 1994. Currently, she's a professional certified coach specializing in executive and organizational development coaching. She is a certified Master Practitioner of the Myers-Briggs Type Indicator and a world expert on how to use type effectively for personal and team development. She is also a skilled, and this is a good one, we're going to go into this a little bit, she is also a skilled mental fitness coach. And just like physical fitness, you can deliberately build focus and resilience to help you reach your goals. The stronger your mental muscle, the more likely you are to hold on to your gains over time. She uses positive intelligence, which is an up-and-coming framework to achieve mental resilience. Prior to coaching, she has 25 years of experience in applied brain science and used this hands-on experience to help her clients understand how they can stay focused, be engaged, and energized given the demands of the 21st century workplace. And thanks so much for taking time out of your day to be with us. I certainly do appreciate it for sure.
Happy to be here.
Yeah. So and we've got other stuff to talk about. I did want to just touch on this mental fitness coach. I really like that. And I think it's, it's something that we all need to keep in mind, is that we kind of have to keep our mind. And I'm sure there are exercises and things we can do, but we have to exercise our mind in order to make it stronger.
Yep, absolutely. The idea of mental fitness is one of resiliency. So we all go through life with various challenges and stressors. The term I like to use is dynamic tension. So anytime we encounter something that's stressful, I call that dynamic tension. And so you engage with that, and then that creates the personal growth. But the idea of the mental fitness is if every day you practice making your mental muscle just a little bit stronger, when you actually encounter some of those challenges, you're able to meet them more readily. So it would be like saying, you're lifting 20-pound weights at the gym, but if you encounter a 100-pound problem, that might be a little bit of a challenge.
Right.
So, we want to continue to build our ability to handle the 100-pound problems. And in the meanwhile, it just makes those 20-pound problems a little bit easier. So
goodness knows we can all use that for sure.
No, it's a wonderful, and it's a very, very much everybody available to anybody, but you do have to work on it like you go to the gym.
Yeah. All right. Awesome. Well, actually, the topic that we had talked about discussing today is that entrepreneurial edge. And, I think probably the best jumping off point is that big idea that people have. Sometimes that's just the beginning. And, one thing we talk a lot about this show, and I think the pandemic has amplified this, is that sometimes people fall into work either, maybe they're a good plumber, they get out on their own, or, electrician in a trade, and then all of a sudden they're doing stuff on their own, and then they wake up one day and they got 5 employees and they're a business all of a sudden. Or, and I think what I've heard a lot with the pandemic are people being forced out. And so maybe they've picked up this side hustle, and all of a sudden, it's turned into a nice going concern. And then it's like, sometimes success can lead you to the point of, okay, now what? Where do we go from here?
Yeah. Well, and there's a lot to think about in what you just talked about. So, the first thing I want to talk about is a lot of times when people have an idea and they're going to start a business or something like that, they kind of sketch it out on the back of a napkin. And if they have a collaborator or two, they get a pizza and a couple of beers and they talk about it and things like that. And what happens though, as the business starts to grow, which is your greatest hope, is your business is going to grow. A lot of times you haven't put the structures in place to support that growth.
Right.
So So you could say, well, I have a business. Let's say I've got a trucking business, and it's I have one or two trucks and a couple of drivers, and okay, good, we got this going on. But now all of a sudden you've got 10, 20, whatever to track, and if you don't have strategies in place to take on that extra load or whatever, that's when you can start to run into trouble.
Yeah, and it's counterintuitive, but sometimes success can be the beginning of the end for a lot of businesses if they don't plan ahead and have those structures in place. It can be it can be almost as bad as not having any customers.
Yeah, very much so. I don't know if you remember, if you ever had this down in Dallas. Did you ever have a chain called Boston Market?
Yes.
Okay, yes, and you can see they don't exist anymore.
Right.
Yeah, I haven't seen one in a long time.
Yeah.
And they were the classic case of the business that grew without the structural underpinnings to make it successful on a large scale.
Yeah, and it's funny you bring them up because it's been, oh my gosh, it's been 20 years ago. I had such a bad experience with them. For people that don't know, is they had at this time they had 4 entrees a day. I mean, it was like a meatloaf or a chicken or this. So, after church one day we rolled in there. It's like 1:30 in the afternoon, and hey, could we? And the kids wanted this and that, and so it's like, well, we don't have any. All we've got's meatloaf. So, okay, well, we'll just take, 4 meatloaf plates. So I'm sitting there watching a piece of meatloaf comes out of the back to the lady, and she picks it up and takes it over to the window and hands it to the car. And then they promptly come and tell us, sorry, we're out of meatloaf. I'm like, okay. I'm like, it's 1:30 in the afternoon. Y'all only got 4 things to serve, and you're already out of everything. You're just going to close anyway. It's just funny you bring them up because it was such a crazy story that I just couldn't believe that they could stay in business. And obviously they weren't able to sustain staying in business.
It's the one that comes to my mind all the time when I think about, because I remember when they got started, it's like, oh yeah, I go to Boston Market, you get chicken and they got really good sides and blah, 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 blah. And then, then you'd see another one pop and another one pop up, another, franchise or however they would open these stores. And my gosh, it just collapsed, and that's what can happen when you're successful, but you don't have the structures in place, to support it.
Yeah, and I think I don't want to jump ahead of ourselves. Maybe you're going to mention this, but I think sometimes in these cases like that, when you grow so much, it's not only the physical infrastructure, the computers, the network, and all that, but sometimes we outgrow that people structure that we're not able to educate and bring people online where they can make these crucial decisions. And I hate to pick on it, but let's just go back to my example. Is like, we're getting low on meatloaf. It's noon on a Sunday. Maybe we should just throw some more in the oven. I mean, but there wasn't anybody, that felt like they had that authority to make that decision. So anyway, I just wanted to bring up that, sometimes that people element is an important part of that equation.
It's so huge. It's as huge as any of those other structures. And in fact, being in the people development business, that's the stuff I see all the time, which is, you're getting bigger and bigger, but you don't have, the leadership to move people in the same direction or to foresee what might need to be addressed or changed. You don't have the managerial protocols. I mean, it's just the bigger you are, the more you have to have your act together with your staff.
Right.
And what starts out on the back of a napkin, which is a great idea, can often, end up, just falling apart. Yeah. Like a paper napkin.
Yeah. And I look at some of these pitfalls we run into because, it's easy to lash out at the poor customer service girl who, she just came in there to serve up some food today. She's not in charge of all these things. And so,
Right, right.
but the approach that I've kind of taken with some companies that I've worked for is it's a total management breakdown, because people only know what we tell them, or they can only do what we allow them to do. So if we're not training,
Yep.
if we're not giving people the correct authority and trust, I mean,
Yep.
to me, I'm so old, back in my day, they were all small businesses, but it was the owner and a couple trusted people, and the trusted people, they could make pretty much any decision customer service
Yep.
wise. But now we've grown to these huge organization, and it just seems like that did not follow, where we've given anybody the authority to make their customer happy.
That's absolutely, absolutely true, And so, you see this a lot in multiple businesses.
Yeah.
And so it's something that, as if an individual or, a small business is expecting to grow, that they need to put that on their plate, the strategies of growth and the structures you're going to need in order,
Yeah.
to satisfy that growth.
Yeah.
So,
How do you feel about processes and procedures? Because there's two thoughts. Is some people are like, well, we want to be loose and flexible, but I look at processes and procedures not as stop signs, but more of guardrails. They kind of keep us
Yep.
between where we need to be, but we can still
Yep.
allow some flexibility. And that's something that I see a lot with people I work with, is that just there's no documentation. So, I mean, Ann knows that, when you come in, you know exactly what you're supposed to do. But when you leave and Judy comes in behind you, it's like,
Yep.
who knows what Ann was doing every day. You got
Right,
the job
right.
done, and it's not that you weren't doing it, but I don't know what system do I need to log to, what report do I pull down. And so, to me, those are the things that it just takes a little time to have a flow chart and a process.
Yep.
And then the other thing,
Yep.
the great thing about that is, if you take the time, typically you will find gaps in this already to, either Ann can speak up and say, here's a trouble I have, or you find that big hole. So I kind of get your take on that.
Yeah, no, as a matter of fact, this is a great segue into what the Entrepreneur Edge assessment,
Okay.
which I use, will do, which is it will identify the places where you're likely to be very strong in your entrepreneurial adventure. So let's say you're really, really good at your people skills. So you're good at communication and coaching your employees and things like that. Let's just say that for an example. But you're short on paying attention to things like details. The procedures that you were speaking about. How do you let the next person know what is expected of them as they take over for you, for
Right.
instance? And so, when you do something like an entrepreneurial edge, you can start to suss out what it is that is going to be a natural strength for you, and what it is that you might not pay a lot of attention to. And the thing is, you can go along for a little while with just, leveraging your strengths, but at some point, you've got to address the stuff that you kind of, you're a little blind to.
Right.
And so that's what this does. And it'll also help a person develop some specific activities where they can develop those skills. So you don't ever want to look at any of the things that you're doing and say, I'm just not good at details, so that, I'm doomed. But you can work on
Right,
that and
right.
understand how important it is to your business.
Yeah. Yeah. And, sometimes, again, this is my theory. I'll get you to weigh in on it. Is that we don't always have to be the boss of everything, and not
Yes.
only does it teach us how to delegate, but I mean, if I'm good at sales, then I don't need to hire a salesman and me be the back office runner. I mean, hire for those skills that you need help with, and then do your own thing. And that goes for HR.
Yep.
Maybe you have the last say on who we hire, but you shouldn't be
Right,
wrapped
right.
up in this entire process and get, we need to hire talent that can really excel in these
Yep.
other areas that we're maybe not our field.
Yeah, and I love what you're bringing up here. You're bringing up the idea of delegating.
Yes.
The identifying very specific things that need to be done, and then delegating. And that is, I think theoretically everybody would say, yeah, let's, delegate.
Right.
But in reality, we can get in our own way by trying to control too many things, or not empower somebody else to take on some of those tasks that need to be done.
Yep.
So the key to all of this is to really enhance your self-awareness. To know what your tendencies are, to know what you need help with, what you need to delegate, but also to what degree do you feel like you always have to be in control? To what degree are you a stickler about various things, to the point where people can't work with you?
Right.
There's a lot to consider in this whole pile here.
Yeah, and that's the other thing. We can run, if we don't learn how to share responsibility and delegate, we can run good talent off, because we don't the people that we hire for key positions, they don't need to be micromanaged like a child.
Right.
We need to give them
Right,
tasks, set the responsibility, and then let them do their thing, and don't. I guess think positive, that if we make the right hires, we give them the right tools, they're going to do the right job, not the other way around. Like I can't trust anybody, to do these tasks, because I don't know. One thing I found in life is there's always somebody better than you at whatever you're good at. There's still somebody better than you. So we can always, we may have to look a little harder, but we can always find, somebody that can handle that position.
Absolutely, absolutely. So so it's a big deal with small businesses, and then if you are not at the level of a business idea, so you're a true entrepreneur, you're just starting out with a particular business idea, an enormous number of ideas never come to fruition. I believe it's as high as 90%. Wow. 90% of these ideas die in the vine and never go anywhere. Now, if that was true, if it was 90%, what do you think is happening with that 90%? What do you think's happening? Why it's not going from idea to fruition?
I would say because they want to try to tackle it themselves and not get others involved to help them get it going.
Yep. What else do you think comes into play?
I would say I was just thinking money, the backing. Maybe it's a really ambitious idea, but we've got to have capital, and sometimes you can't start every business on a shoestring.
Yes, that's another thing too. Exactly. It's how good are you with finances? How good are you with tracking where your money is? How good are you with getting funding? So that's another possibility. What else do you think might stand in their way?
I think maybe even people looking for not justification, but looking for others to give them looking for approval from others, or having a naysayer say, you know what, that'll never work. And it's funny because I just this morning, I don't know if you've seen the news, but they announced Jeff Bezos is stepping down from running day to day and just going to be a corporate chair. But in 1994, I'm sure, can you imagine what his friends and family were saying? You want to start a bookstore in your garage with some kind of an internet thing? I mean, can you imagine the ridicule that he must have endured when he wrote that idea down?
Yeah, exactly. Well, and that's exactly right. So so can you sell your idea? Can you see it enough where you can sell it to others so that they will jump on board with you?
Right.
Do you have the patience to wait it out? Because a lot of times somebody's great idea is the great aha, and it's like into the future, but then they don't know how to step it back so that they can take the steps to make it really happen. So, the networking, the selling of the idea, the finances, the stick-to-itiveness, are you a person who jumps from idea to idea before you test drive an idea? All of those things really get in the way of people who are, trying to make a business idea float.
Yeah.
And
we talk about this in sales a lot, but I go back to the agrarian model, is that we have to sow the seed, we have to cultivate, and then we reap our harvest. And in sales, a lot of times it's a one call, hey, I'm sowing my seed and I'm reaping the harvest today. If I'm not, I'm moving on. It's no relationship building, but that can happen in businesses too. And I love social media. I love electronics. I think, there's a lot of positive, but I will say on the negative side is, I see the guy with the big boat and he's in the business I'm in. And it's like, why can't I have my picture in front of the big boat? We have these, maybe unrealistic ideas and expectations set off of what we get in these social media feeds. Whereas, the guy that was an overnight success, we just heard about him overnight, but you didn't hear about the last 10 years while he's been toiling away or, struggling behind the scenes. That, the graph of success is not just a linear line. It's all, and it's like, some lady, a podcast I was on recently, she said, I don't remember the question, but she posed, it was like, have you ever wanted to quit? And I said, in the last hour? Yeah, 3 times. It's like, it's like it's a struggle every day. And so there's so many times that we could just fold it up and say, I'm not doing this anymore. But I guess, and kind of get back to that's, you have to have that passion and really believe in your mission and what you're doing too.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think, all of these variables that we've been talking about, we've talked about a number of them already. All of these variables have to come into a sphere of self-awareness. Oftentimes we are unaware of some of our tendencies.
Right.
So, you might be vaguely aware that you jump from thing to thing. For instance, I got this idea, I got that idea, and you abandon it before you actually give it a good test drive.
Right.
And what you can be telling yourself is, that just wasn't a very good idea. And instead of saying, maybe it's me, maybe it's because I tend to jump from thing to thing, and it actually has a consequence because nothing ever has the opportunity to take root.
Yeah.
And so, you have to have an enormous amount of self-awareness to make a business would go that way.
Yeah, one thing I was just writing down while you're talking, it kind of goes along with that, is ego check. Because if I'm struggling, whether it's the business or a component, sometimes we don't want that to seep out like somebody thinks I can't handle it, or they think there's a flaw in me or the business, when it's like, I judge people and managers not on what they know, but do they know how to go seek the answer for what they don't know? That's the most important part of all this. So asking help from others, there's nothing wrong with that. Nothing at all. Right.
Absolutely. And honestly, this is something, I mentioned, you mentioned at the beginning of the broadcast here, that I've been in the people development business for a long time.
Yeah.
Here's one of the things I know to be very true, and that is your level of self-awareness comes along in layers. So let's say you're an individual who's very, very, very talkative, and if somebody says, you talk a lot, and you nod your head, yeah, I know I talk a lot, but you don't get to the layers of, well, what does that mean as far as somebody who has to listen to you, or what impact is that having on people being willing to come into your office and ask you a question because, you might be there for 20 minutes because you're so talkative. I mean, in other words, it peels back in layers.
Right.
And so it's sort of a kind of a lifelong quest to really understand the impact of both our strengths and our blind spots.
Yeah.
And that falls into the category of self-awareness.
Yeah, and it's important. in the creative part for me, because, when I get stuck on something, if I'm very self-aware in the moment, I can see, hey, I've been sitting here for an hour or 2 hours, digging and
Yep.
trying to look around and find this. And sometimes it's just as easy as stepping up, taking a walk, getting outside, breathing fresh air. It just clears your head. But
Yep.
I will tell you that, in my youth, I would have sat there for 2 or 3 more hours banging my head against the table instead of, just trying to be aware of what's going on around me. Why has this become a problem all of a sudden?
Yeah, you learn something. You spend a little time on the planet. And ironically, I'm so glad you brought that up, because there's a book by Adam Grant called Originals. And basically it talks about individuals who've had original ideas, et cetera. And they talk about like the Warby Parker glasses and, a number of other things.
Yeah.
But one of the things that was articulated in that book is the most successful entrepreneurs have actually spent time somewhere else first. So they didn't jump out of college and boom, there they go. I mean, there's a few that have, but it's such a small amount. The vast majority of successful entrepreneurs have spent some time on the planet, have been doing other kinds of work that'll inform their choices with entrepreneurship.
Right. Oh. Their mind goes on. Their mind are going off now. Oh.
Yeah, I love
sorry
it.
about that. Yeah. I'm sorry. Go
That's
ahead.
right. Mine can't hear because I've got the earphones on.
Yeah.
So they're laying there like perfect little gentlemen so far. So far.
So, is there, after you do the entrepreneurial edge, is there, I know it's probably looks at a wide range of things, but are there some typical, like a checklist of things that you go down through and say, these are some things that we need to do to avoid, certain pitfalls as we start this journey or as we are in the journey?
Yes. Yep. That's exactly what it does. Is it takes you through a number of, excuse me, a number of areas that are known to create successful entrepreneurship.
Okay.
And you effectively you rate yourself on these various areas, and you see where the holes are and where the strengths are.
Okay,
So,
cool.
You might be really good manager of people. You might be a really good networker. You might be really good with money, but there might be some other areas that are not quite as strong.
Yeah.
And so there'll be some suggestions on things you can do specifically to strengthen that part of your endeavor.
Okay.
So, and it might be as simple as find somebody who can help you with this because it doesn't look like it's a strength of yours.
Yeah, and which brings up a good point. So when is too early to take this? I've got a kernel of an idea. I haven't even written it on the napkin yet, but I'm thinking, is that a good time? Let's go ahead and take that. And then we kind of know as we start through that planning phase versus getting started and getting, waist deep in something and then trying to figure out where our shortcomings are.
Well, to me, it is useful to do it as you're getting started, to do it, as you've, made a little bit of progress with the idea. So redo it, revisit it and see where you are. And just, use that because the nature of any of these kinds of assessments is they're not like diagnostics, like you go to get your blood tested and all that, but they're guidelines and check-ins.
Right.
And so that's the value of them. It's a structured way to appraise the whole process of entrepreneurship and what you need to do to make it more likely that you'll be successful.
Yeah.
So. Yeah,
and I think we change as we, as we start down any road in life. Maybe we thought we were going to be the awesome salesperson, but now we're the, whatever you're doing, the awesome inventory person or, stamping out the license plate or whatever we do. And, so I guess that's another good reason to kind of keep a monitor on that just in case things change. We can change as well before we get into trouble.
Yeah, exactly. And again, it's just it's a way for a person to, in an organized way, kind of, it's almost like do your scorecard.
Yeah, right.
strong here, not so strong here, really got to watch for here.
Yeah.
And, and because you're answering the questions, it's your, perception of how things are going and what you need to pay attention to. When I went from my work in the hospital, the work I did with brains, and then I started my business for coaching, there was a lot of stuff that I just wasn't aware of. And it was, can I define what it is, what I'm actually doing? How are my finances set up? There was so much for that itty bitty little business of one guy.
Right.
It's incredible. Now imagine that you're trying to make an idea float with multiple people, or even, just a few. It takes a lot of self-awareness.
Yeah, and it's another good reason, I think, to surround ourselves with, a team of advisors. And my mother would love to be one, but I say, look, I need somebody that's going to tell me that I'm wrong every now and then. You can, but you need somebody that can give you that honest feedback and because especially starting things, we don't know what we don't know, unfortunately, and so that's another reason. And sometimes even competitors, maybe across town or in a different city, they are more than glad to help you. You reach out, they can tell you some pitfalls that they ran in, or maybe you need to have a certificate or this license or things like that, to keep you from getting in trouble.
Yeah.
So always surround yourself with, and there's a great, there's a great new line out that if you're the smartest person in the room, you need to find a new room.
Yeah. No kidding. No kidding. Yeah. No, as a matter of fact, I was talking to a friend of mine this week, and I said my favorite TED Talk is the TED Talk that talks about how wrong we are most of the time.
Right.
I said, it's the most freeing thing in the world to not have to think you got to be right all the time.
Exactly. So how long would it take to go through this if, and I guess that you can find this online. And we'll talk about how people can get in contact with you in a minute, but is this something that you just go online and can get through?
Yep.
Okay.
It's about 20 minutes. And so you'd want to, you can't just find it online. You have to go through somebody who can interpret it for you.
Right.
So they'd have to say, okay, I'm interested in hearing what, Entrepreneur Edge has to say.
Okay.
And so, if they wanted to think about that or pursue that, the first thing that they would do is probably book just a basic initial consultation with me, which is free.
Okay.
And just, talk to me about what it is that you're trying to accomplish, and even to find out if this particular assessment is going to be helpful to you.
Yeah.
So it probably will be, but I always like to talk to somebody first to make sure I understand what their goals are.
Right. No, and that's good. I think you bring up another good point about any kind of an assessment, whether it's there's a lot out there. I'm not going to try to name all of them, but it's not taking it that is the hardest part. We have to be open and self-aware. It's the interpretation of the results is that where we can get in trouble.
Yes.
And again, that's why, going through a professional such as yourself is well worth it to make sure that we interpret, what we're doing in the correct manner.
Absolutely. It's huge. It makes a difference between the thing being somewhat useful and extremely useful or game changing. Somebody can help you understand it from the interpretation standpoint, because sometimes some of these online assessments aren't even correct because you haven't even interpreted their question in the way that is supposed to lead to the way it's supposed to be interpreted.
Right.
So, for instance, if you're talking about like extroversion, if you say, no, I don't need to be the life of the party, in your mind, you could say, all right, well, therefore I'm introverted, but that's not true.
Right.
They're not so you need somebody to kind of help walk you through the possibility that you're extroverted, but you don't need to be the life of the party.
Yeah, and that's because that's just
things like that.
Sidebars, like you take these tests and you get the results. But to me, the questions, a lot of them are situational. It's like, there are times to be an introvert and there are times that you're the extrovert. And so it's not always one answer fits all situations. But anyway, I think that the other part of this is you've seen enough of these tests to know how I answer it, to maybe also give a little extra insight into some challenges or some positive points that come from that
Absolutely.
too.
Yeah. There's a couple of assessments, like, I do the emotional intelligence assessment, the gold standard, the EQI 2.0, where you can actually go back and talk about how that person answered it. And so you can say, well, you rated yourself in this way. Tell me more about what you were thinking when you rated yourself. And you may find through that simple discussion that it really is a little bit different for you.
Yeah. Right.
So it's a good conversation around any assessment you take is
Right.
going to be the game changer part of it.
Yeah. Well, Ann, I want to thank you for taking time. If you've got anything else you want to add quickly, that we're going to wrap it up here. One of my wrap up questions is, so what is a tool that you use in your life? It can be an app, maybe it's a habit or a process, but what's something you do personally or professionally that just adds a lot of value to your day?
So actually, and I'm glad we'll be having a chance to talk about it, but the Positive Intelligence program, which is a daily opportunity to build my mental muscle,
Okay.
is that, along with, of course, my physical walking every day and making sure my body is physically healthy.
Right.
The other is the mental strength is super important, and you really just have to build it like you would build a muscle at the gym.
Yeah.
So that when you need to call on it, you got it.
All right. Okay. Awesome.
So,
yeah, and we'll have to. I'm gonna, of course, get with you after the show. We've got a lot of topics we'd like to talk about, so I'm gonna see if I can talk you into coming back, and we can delve more into the positive intelligence. That sounds very interesting. So, anyway, well, tell everybody, who is your client, what you can do for them, and of course how they can reach out and get a hold of you.
Okay, so I am an individual who works with emerging leaders, emerging entrepreneurs, people who are looking to level up, is the term that is being used a lot today, but to uncover your potential, so that whatever endeavor that you're taking on, you know what your strengths are, you know what your blind spots are, you have the mental resilience and strength to push through to those higher goals. Anybody who is interested in talking to me can go to my website, annholm.net, ANNHOLM.net, and can book a free consultation, and I'll talk to you about what I can do for you. And if I can't give you what you're actually looking for, I could probably refer you somewhere else.
Okay.
So I get a number of inquiries, and if I don't feel like I'm the person who you need right now, I'll refer you on.
Okay.
So,
well, that's great. Well, y'all reach out to Ann, no matter where you are in the journey. If you're just starting or if you've gone down the road a little bit, reach out, see how she can be a help and make your life easier, and maybe we can make your venture more successful as well. So thanks a lot, Ann. Certainly do appreciate it. Until next time, that's going to be it for the Business of Business podcast. Of course, you can find us at the www.thebusinessofbusinesspodcast.com. We are also on all the major social media, Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, and the recording of this episode, when it goes live, will be up on YouTube as well. So we ask that you check it out. We are on all the major platforms like iTunes, Google, Stitcher, Spotify. If we're not on one that you listen to, please reach out. I'd be glad to see if we can get added to that. So until next time, take care of yourself and take care of your business. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.